Hi, this is John Rosenhead, a Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post for Parshas Tazria. We're going to look at the idea behind, or explore a little bit the idea of what a mikvah stands for, what it represents. In this week's Parsha, we're told about the obligation for a woman after giving birth to a child to go to the mikvah. This is part of the purification process after having given birth. But on a general perspective, let's look at the idea of a mikvah. And this idea of purification, whether it's for a human being or whether it's for vessels, there's this opportunity to use a mikvah to bring about a change in status, to bring about a transition from one state to another, from impurity to purity. And it's interesting from an etymological point of view. We have the word mikvah, which is what is used to bring about this change. The body of water being a mikvah is linked to the word tikvah. Tikvah meaning hope. There's some connection between the idea of change and this transition, which is brought about through a mikvah, and the idea of hope. And from a psychological point of view, this is a critical idea to understand that change is something that people hold on to and aspire towards, and that they, in a way, they are seeking in their life. Change is important. It's an integral part of life. We can't stay in a status quo in a situation, even if it's positive and good. Change is a natural occurrence, something that has to happen as we progress through life. And certainly, when people are struggling and they are suffering they might be suffering very hard emotions, difficult emotions, tragedies and traumas that they experience in their life. Certainly the hope of change can be very powerful, to understand that life can move on in a sense, and that there is a possibility of experiencing a transition from tragedy to continuing and to being healthy and functioning. This change is the hope that people hold on to and people are striving for to see. So mikvah and tikvah go together and complement each other from an etymological point of view, because transition and change and holding on to hope is what brings about the movement and brings about the ability for a person to experience this transition from one state to another. And if we look at this, certainly from the point of view of a human being immersing in a mikvah and the psychological states that a human being can experience, this is an important message for us to connect with and to understand that a transition in state, going from one position to another, is a movement of hope. It's a movement of a belief that a person can change. And even if you are in a certain state at this very moment, going into your own psychological mikvah, understanding that there is hope, even in dark times, even in a dark situation, there is hope, and through that there comes about a change. And if we look at the idea of vessels, the immersing of vessels in a mikvah, we know there are certain vessels that there's an obligation that you have to put them in the mikveh in order to use them. But interestingly, and that is what brings about the change from a vessel that is not kosher to be used, that we can't use for eating, to undergoing a transition for it to be kosher. But if we look at earthenware vessels, klei cheres, this is something that cannot be toveled in a mikveh. It cannot, once it becomes tamei, putting it in a mikveh does not help. It remains in this state, but the only thing that you can do is to break it. You can break the vessel, if it is a tamei, if it is a earthenware vessel. And the breaking of the vessel is, in a sense, you could say, the tahara process, the tevilah process. You can't actually put it in water, you can't put it in the mikveh. But even in a dire situation, even when you are broken, even when the klei cheres is seemingly stuck in this state, it has to be broken, and breaking it seems destructive and tragic. But that is the solution in itself. That is the hope that can come about, the change that can come about, even when a person is in the most difficult situation and they are broken. Out of that falling down and breaking into pieces comes about the solution. And therefore there is, you could say, even in the most difficult situations, the most extreme situations, where there seems to be no hope, there's no option of a mikvah tikvah, understanding. The only option is to be broken, is to break the vessel. And through that we understand, we can say from a halachic point of view or from a psychological point of view, the change and the transition can still occur. And it can still bring about the necessary change to move on. This is an important message of hope and understanding that we need to look for our own personal, individual, psychological mikvah, to hold on to that hope, to bring about change. Have a great Shabbos and keep well.